open the page. I did it all. I owned every second that this world could give that I did. Yeah, I feel every broken bone.
Let's go, Will. Come on. I love it.
Welcome to another episode of Heated Conversation. We have just graduated senior, who took her 5th year, Luisa Blanco, here on the podcast. We're going to talk about her experience as a student athlete here at the University of Alabama, as well as her journey as she gets ready for Paris, as she's going to represent Colombia at the 2024 Olympics in just a month or so. So we're going to talk about all those things, kind of her background, just her story, and hopefully it's a good time and a good opportunity for you guys to kind of hear another student athlete's story, especially as they're pursuing the Olympics. So let's welcome Luisa to the podcast. Luisa, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy. Anytime I could, sit down and talk to somebody about my story, I think it just makes the actual, process of getting to this point, even more real, because I still don't believe that I'm going, even though I leave in, I think, 8 or 9 days. So I'm just glad I get to sit down and talk to you and, make it more real.
Some of the things that can make things kind of feel real is obviously being in there in the moment, right? And allowing your imagination to kind of get there and to go there. What kind of things have you done to allow your imagination to get there? Have you been out of the country before?
So I've been focusing on college. I mean, as everybody knows, if they're following my career, I've been at Alabama, and I kind of shut the door on elite gymnastics for a really long time. I think I just grew up and my dreams shifted, and college became my dream. So I think in this last year, with COVID coming around and everybody getting that 5th year, I wanted to make the most of it and not have any regrets on my career. So I thought, why not pursue the elite route? And it's allowed me to explore so many beautiful parts of the world. When I was younger, and now, I want to say older, but I'm still very young. I competed in Chile for the Pan American Games, and that was absolutely beautiful. I got to go see the Andes Mountains and just, do a lot of fun things that you don't necessarily get to do in the grind that is being a student athlete. But
Right.
I really have lived the best of every single world in these past 4 years. But I would say, yes, I've jumped internationally here and there, but I've never been to the other side of the world. So like Europe and Paris especially, they're just dream locations that I never thought I would see myself or be in. So that's why I keep saying I can't believe it, until I'm actually on the way to Paris.
What was the spark for you that said, hey, I want to go to the 2024 Olympics?
I wouldn't say that the decision was mine alone. I don't think I do anything alone in life. I don't think we do anything alone in life. I think it takes a village, and it was a lot of people pouring into me to make this decision. And because you have times where you have an idea that pops into your head, but you either put it away or be like, oh, it's too big of a dream, or I don't know how I can make it work in my last year of gymnastics. But especially here at Alabama, I've had an overwhelming support that I don't think I could have gotten anywhere else, truly. And the fact that I had that safety net of people who were willing to buy not only into me, believed in me, but in this process as well. So having this 5th year, I knew I wanted to leave my career, everything that I've left out on the floor, and not, like I said before, leave without regrets or have what ifs. So that's why I decided to try to do everything under the sun. I just wanted to try, because if I looked back and say, gosh, I didn't even try, or I gave up right before I went to college, because I did do Team USA. I tried pursuing that route. I got to compete with the best in the world.
Yeah.
So knowing that you have that, level of talent, or you have that passion, you want to see if you can kind of reignite it. And I love a good challenge in anything in life, and this was no different. So it was a mixture of not wanting to leave with regrets and knowing that I had the right support system.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I could have made it to the Olympics as a kid. I just wasn't there mentally. I had my family, but unfortunately environment at the gym wasn't the best. I wasn't the best mentally. I was immature, and I didn't understand that my coaches were there to help me. I felt, I don't know, I was like that rebellious teenager a little bit. I just didn't know where my place was in the world. And after years of growing and listening and being a literal sponge and trying to hold and take something from everybody that was stepping into my life, you just learn so much that you don't want to leave this huge career without any regrets.
Right.
So there's a lot of moving pieces to why I came back, but it really truly wasn't my decision alone.
Yeah. And I think it's nice to have, like you said, we don't do anything in life alone, which is a really good principle in life, right? To be able to have people that we feel close to support, and you kind of talked about for you yourself, you didn't really believe, or you didn't really feel that you could accomplish what you're about to go and pursue, right? And can you kind of talk about your story? Because you kind of talked about mentally you were immature in some aspects. As you do gymnastics, you find out very quickly is mental, right?
Yeah.
Being able to stay locked in on these events and to really perform at a high level, but also you're getting judged all the time, right? You got to make sure the aesthetics of it is pleasing and have good shapes, and obviously you get rewarded and scores and stuff like that. And growing up in a sport that does that your whole life, and how people present that information to you can really affect people's self-image, right? Can you kind of talk about, for you conquering that battle of just the mental aspect of this sport, and what were some of the steps that you took to really grow in that area?
Right. I mean, I want to say something I've learned here at Alabama is like, when you're here as a student, it doesn't just end because your time as a student athlete is over. I think you should be a student at life. I think you should always, again, be able to take something from somebody that's walking into your life, that's trying to pour into you, even if you don't necessarily understand it or agree with it. And that was gymnastics a lot of the time. I didn't agree with a lot of things that maybe, some of my coaches were saying, because I just wasn't in the right headspace. And I love the way our sport has changed, where it's now a two-way street of communication. But I've talked about this before. There was a kind of almost like a silencing of athletes that was so normalized. Like, coaches would, say this and you would do this. And there wasn't really a purpose behind it, or maybe there was, but the athlete never knew. And that was a recurring theme in my career. I knew my coaches were trying to make me the best athlete, but because I didn't know the why behind it, and I didn't have the courage to speak up, that's where the broken communication happens. And you multiply that by years of training. I don't even know how long I've been doing gymnastics. I think 16 years now. There's a lot of years of doing it wrong that add up, and then you have to do the self-work to kind of retrace your steps or rewire your brain into how do you see yourself. Because unfortunately, you have so many of the wrong things being poured into you, you start to believe them, even if they're not right. So especially in college, I've had to rewire my brain in the way I think, and I've had the right people behind me. Like, I've had the best coaches, a lot of different coaches throughout my career, but again, they've all have served me for a different reason.
Yeah.
And it's something that I continue to struggle with. Like, I'm not perfect by any means.
Yeah.
And so I want to just continue to be like the student of life, where even though I know I have to speak to myself positively, those negative thoughts will still come in, but it's like, how do I rewire my brain to choose the better ones, to choose the better thoughts, and that's what's going to give you the better outcome at the end of the day.
Right.
But I think at this point in my career, like you said, it's way more mental than it is physical.
Yeah.
Because we've done the reps, we've done the numbers,
Yeah.
and sometimes your mind just has to be there before your body is.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to kind of touch on a subject it kind of walks alongside the same thing, but it was something very hard, right? And I think the lesson that probably was learned in this can be very impactful. So let's go back to nationals this year, right? Alabama was in a position where they could really make it to the second day, right? And then beam came. And you're pretty solid on beam, right? And you're pretty consistent. But then it was like one after another, one after another, one after another fell on beam. And can you talk about, in that moment, how did you feel? And then how did you process it? And are you still processing it? Especially going into Paris, a big meet. Are you carrying any of that? And did you grow as a person because of that moment?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I haven't had anyone ask me that, and so I like it because you're picking at my brain. Did that moment? I definitely grew from that moment, but I don't think it defined that team. We had so many incredible moments that year, and we were so close that I think that's what ended up being our downfall. It was like, the domino effect. We saw one of our friends go down, and that next person is supposed to step up and really be there. And sometimes you can't be perfect in our sport. You're off an inch and you're just off, and that's okay. Like, this sport is made up of good days and bad days, and it's really how you respond to the bad moments that show you your character and who you are.
Yeah.
So we had a super uncharacteristic meet, especially that uncharacteristic rotation. But I think it's how we finished the meet that really matters. We gave it our all. We were heartbroken, absolutely devastated, because we knew that wasn't us, and we had started so hot on bars. But I don't think I process it as much because it doesn't define my career.
Good.
I don't think I'm going into Paris being like, oh my gosh, the last routines I did, I fell, because it's just another opportunity to show up and prove, hey, like, that wasn't me, or that wasn't us.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things is going into Paris, that'll give me strength, is when I don't believe in myself, I have this whole community to fall back on.
Yeah.
Like Tuscaloosa, I have my family. I have an entire country that has just opened their arms, and I'm Colombian American. I've lived in 2 different parts of the world,
Yeah.
And it's so cool to know that when I don't believe in myself sometimes, it feels like almost the world believes in me. And that's so, so special. So those are the things that I remember. It's not the falls or necessarily the setbacks. Like, yes, they make you, they hurt in the moment, but they don't make you who you are.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I was just try to, again, rewire those things, shift them, because you can feel the suck, but you can't stay in the suck.
Yeah. And, we've seen the greatest in her last Olympics deal with some of that, right? And especially being a public figure, having the opinions of everybody else. And with you having, one, a university behind you, but also a whole country behind you, doing something that is not as normal, right? There hasn't been many like teams that really we could remember that probably made huge impacts on the Olympic stage, at least from Colombia, at least not from my knowledge, right? But being able to have that support, but also the pressure that you could take on.
Yes.
Can you talk about that, the pride that you have in representing Colombia, but also being able to take pride in knowing that, hey, I've had adversity, I've seen the greatest had adversity and returned to be able to do great things, and what type of motivation that you get from those circumstances.
Right. So I love this question because it's everything that I'm going through right now every day in practice, especially when I miss a turn and I want to get down on myself. Ashley, this little piece, this quote that she always has is, your comfort is always like in conflict with your calling. So you're never going to get to your calling if you're in your comfort zone. And when I want to sit back and get in this shell, because it's so funny, God loves to, it's like that quote that says, like, tell God your plans and he'll laugh at you. It's exactly how I feel. I had a last minute subdivision change literally this past week, where I thought I was going to be in the group with other individuals like myself who are representing their own countries, are in the same boat as me. We were competing with originally Japan and Korea in incredible competition, but not as much of that pressure that comes with being, in that subdivision with like a Team USA or a Russia or a China, teams that have predominantly just stayed in the game for so long and have thrived.
Yeah.
The people who, when they think of gymnastics in the Olympics, like those teams are the ones to watch.
Right.
And I had a subdivision change, and now I find myself competing with former teammates, with Team USA, with China, who is just, textbook gymnastics if you want to learn anything from them. China's the one to watch, and Italy. So you have a lot of pressure, and it's like there's times where I want to kind of just crawl into my shell. And I had this moment yesterday where I just kept falling on simple skills, or I couldn't go for a transition. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do on the biggest stage? And then here comes Ashley, like trying to crack me out of my shell. And I think you need those people, because at the end of the day, kind of like what she was saying, your comfort is always in conflict with your calling, and how are you going to rise up? Like you're either gonna stay in that shell and crumble, or you're gonna rise up. And like, what better time than now? This is quite literally my last opportunity. So I have to just rise up, because there's no other option for me.
Yeah, and one thing I think is really awesome about coaches is they get to remind athletes who they are. Sometimes in the journey, especially when you're going through a difficult time, or the fire, or a storm, whatever words you want to use, it's hard to remember who you are. A lot of times coaches they download that information, and they need to use it at times to remind an athlete when they don't feel like they're capable who they are. And that's an approach I like to do a lot of times, especially when they're in the middle of it. So if you were struggling and it was like, man, I mentally can't do this, but you've already shown me that you can, or you showed me that you have potential to get here, that's what I'm gonna tell you. And then when you're there and you're thriving, I'm gonna remind you of those moments, that the journey that you took, so then you could always be able to access that again. Because being a gymnast for 16 years, you've went through so much. You've had to conquer so much in your conditioning, potential injuries, the mental battles of, comparing yourself and all these other things, and wanting to excel very well, whatever pressures family may have had, your peers, your coaches, all these things that end up becoming really loud and filling your head. But at the same time, you kept working, and you got to the place where you're at a Division I program, SEC, one of the star athletes in the program, having an opportunity to go to the Olympics. And in those moments, we sometimes think that those people are like similar to robots, where they don't really have feelings, or they just can go on autopilot, and they've just, they're just amazing. Right.
We're human. Everybody makes mistakes,
Yes.
literally. And sometimes it's just about humbling yourself and getting back to earth.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when you need that boost. Like, that's what I tell myself when I feel like my brain is not working. A self-affirmation that I have is, I'm made for this. I have done more good turns than I have bad. And I don't know, you just have to work with it. You have to work with your brain, and you have to work with your coaches too, kind of like how you were saying. I don't know where we would be in this sport if we didn't have coaches, seriously. But
yeah, and as you said, the landscape of coaching is different, where it's opening that relationship and knowing that you're able to interact. One quote that I like to say all the time is, whenever we're coaching, we're not coaching products, we're coaching people. And we're trying to produce a product out of that person. And if we neglect the person first, then the product suffers, right? And so we want to make sure as coaches we're always doing that in our approach. Hey, you want to be the best gymnast, but if I can help you become the best person, the most confident person, or let you see that part of you like a mirror and point those things out, what you're going to produce is going to be great, because you're going to work hard, you're going to feel good about it, and it's just going to click, 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 click.
They tend to go hand in hand.
Exactly. And so that's the thing I love about this sport. And not to make this about me, but I don't ever go into a gym, like when I'm going into coach, ever thinking, hey, I want to make them a better gymnast today. Like, that's not my motivation. I could care less about helping them do that, and that probably sounds bad, but I don't want to get so caught up in the place where their gymnastics becomes their identity and how they do it, like how they do the actual skills, like be the reason why I'm upset with them, proud of them. It's the life lessons that we learn, the attitude that you have, and the effort that you put in. Those are my driving forces, right?
That's awesome.
And can you talk about people in your life that you're like, okay, throughout my gymnastics journey, were those types of people who came in and was like, you know what, you're more than the gymnast. You're Luisa Blanco, and I want to invest into her?
Gosh, I have so many people. I think the first one that just comes to the top of my head is my mom. She really is the most incredible woman I've ever met in my entire life. And yes, I am biased, but she's shown it. She moved to this country with nothing, with a literal hairbrush. And she worked her butt off to, make a future for her kids. It was never about her. She's so selfless in everything that she does, but she really instilled those qualities in me. And every time I would come home from a bad day at the gym, she would know, and we wouldn't talk about gymnastics. We would talk about something else. She would switch my mind. She would, just be so the person I could always go to for anything. And I know my mom will always love me for me. We had this conversation. We were packing up all my stuff because I was moving out of my house, and I think she could tell how much I needed her, because you get to this point, I'm 22 years old, I'm becoming an adult. I am an adult. And in just the high-paced, speed that is my life right now, I'm in this transitional period where I'm done being a student athlete, but I'm still an athlete, but I'm still at Alabama. I'm holding on to old remnants of my life, but I'm trying to start anew, and I'm trying to act like I have it all together, and I have nothing together at all. So when my mom came and helped me move out, to move out of my house, as soon as I saw her and I gave her a hug, I just lost it. You just never know how much you need your family until they're there. And I talk to her every single day. She's my best friend, but there's nothing like my mom's hugs.
Yeah.
And I know she will always love me for me.
Right.
And she already told me, I know you're putting this pressure on yourself. You want to be the best, show your best, do your best, but you've already made it. How cool is it that this is how you get to end your career? Who gets to say that?
Right.
And the way you did it is so one of a kind, out of the storybooks.
Yeah.
And knowing that, she thinks that I'm already a champion at life.
Yeah.
At 22 years old.
Come on.
It gives me chills from a woman who, I get so emotional talking about my mom.
No, I love it.
But,
I love it.
from a woman who really is the champion at life. People told her no so many times, and she was like, watch me.
Yeah.
Watch me do it.
Come on.
And it wasn't through me, it was through her kids.
Yeah.
And she didn't do it once, she did it twice with my brother. My brother didn't have the same opportunities as me, but he made the most of what he had, and he made a life for himself.
Yeah.
So I think my mom is the most incredible woman, and she will always love me for me.
Yeah.
And there have been so many people who have been a part of this journey, every single coach that I've had, whether it's been through tough love or just real, TLC, you know? They have always poured something into me. Dana Duckworth, she gave me this opportunity. She saw me at 14 years old when she was going in to recruit some other kid, and saw me on beam and was like, I like that toe point, let's see where this goes. And she took a chance on me when I was injured, and gave me an opportunity of a lifetime. I will forever be indebted to her. Huge part of my story. Ashley just really taught me what it means to dig deep within yourself, and what it means to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
So I have so many incredible women in my life.
Yeah.
But those are just the three that pop into my head right now.
Yeah.
I know I kind of went everywhere with this question.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. It's the people who paved the way for me. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be here.
Yeah. No, and I think that's good. And part of people's story, it doesn't have to be perfect, because our life isn't perfect, right? But the things that make an impact is huge, right? Also for you, having a culture within a culture was probably something you had to navigate. Can you talk about being Colombian in America, in a household, as we talked earlier, that raised you as if you were Colombian, not, Colombians trying to adapt to America, but being able to preserve the culture within your own household, and the pride that you carry now that you get to represent that country.
Right. So when I was a lot younger, I claim Dallas till I die, but I was born in LA, and there's a lot of Latino culture in LA, and I think that's why my family moved there, just to be more in closer to people who look like us, who speak like us, who understand us.
Yeah.
And I mean, life comes at you, recession comes in '08, and my family, they all moved to Texas. So I move in. It was a lot harder for my brother just because we have a 9-year age gap, so he was going into high school and I was just still a little baby. And I did everything that my parents would tell me to do. But like you said, or like I was telling you earlier, at home it was Spanish only. I was eating all Colombian dishes. My mom was the best cook, even though she hates cooking. She is the best. All the traditions were upheld. All the cookouts, we never missed a World Cup. We never missed watching Colombian play soccer. It's just all these things, the dancing, the laughter, the always trying to be together as a family. Like, that was my life at home. And then I would go to school and I would be the only brown girl in the classroom, you know? I'd be the only brown girl on my team for most of my career. And that was hard. It was a hard shift because I knew my entire life I was proud to be like Colombian, and I knew it in my heart. But when I went outside and I was different, I almost shied from it. People would ask me like on the playground, "Oh, can you speak Spanish? Do it right now." And I'm like, I don't want to just speak Spanish. Like, that's weird or that's awkward. So I grew into that a lot in college. Like, my whole life I'd kind of been a little bit reserved with, you know, trying to express my heritage and say why I'm proud to be who I am or where my family's from, like why I'm proud. And coming into college is where you get to find out who you truly are.
Yeah.
And nobody knows you, so you get to start fresh.
Yeah.
And that was the number one thing. I was like, I'm tired of being embarrassed or shy or because it's different. Like, I want people to know I'm Colombian and why I love it so much.
Yeah.
And so I made it my goal to become more comfortable with myself. And anytime I have an opportunity like this, like, always turn it back to my people. Always turn it back to like what makes me me and where I feel the most comfortable, you know?
Right.
So whether it's through like my floor music, or anytime I get to sit down and whether it's like somebody in the grocery store or I'm doing a podcast, like, I don't know. I always let people know who I am.
Yeah.
And I love it. And it's something that gives me strength when I'm feeling low.
I love that. Now, kind of as we wrap up, what are some things that you want to leave with, you know, either athletes in general or gymnasts in general or people who are in similar situations to you who are pursuing things? Because one thing that you could get caught up in is, especially if you've done life here in America, right? And thinking to make like a Team USA is very difficult. Like, we have the best gymnasts in the country, the best gymnasts ever, and we have a lot of athletes that are doing well. So then if, you know, there's athletes who, you know, want to make Olympic teams, you know, either are in a similar situation where they have, you know, heritage backgrounds that allow them to be able to do for different countries and compare and be like, hey, you know what? And people who may not know, or people who are in the sport may be like, hey, they weren't good enough to be able to make the team, so they had to do this. Or, you know, this is like their way of being able to kind of
Make the most.
Yes, or cheat the system because they were raised in America. Why should they be able to get that opportunity? What would you say, you know, to that? But also, what would you say to those people who have these goals and have these dreams and want to pursue them just like you are?
So I think how I would respond to that is anytime that there's something new, people have something to say, or there's criticism behind it, just because it hasn't been done before. Like, you don't see a lot of people doing that. So I think that's why I wanted to step into this, and not just myself. I think there's a couple NCAA athletes going, Aaliyah Finnegan from LSU, Emma Malabuyo at UCLA, and they're both going for the Philippines. And we were all at one point fighting to like rep that USA.
Yeah.
And something that people don't know until you live it is when you have this double heritage, this dual citizenship, like, you always have it in your heart. Like, your heart doesn't like have to be necessarily like where you live.
Okay.
And unfortunately, like, they will never be in your shoes and they don't know your heart.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from, and you're saying you're trying to make the most of this opportunity, or you just weren't good enough. But it's more like, why don't we just flip the script and say, we're trying to pave the way where it's a choice that, you know, girls can make on their own, and they don't have to feel bad about it.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, you can be Colombian and American. Like, it's not one or the other.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the backlash is just because it's all new.
Yeah.
But I think it's tunnel vision from here on out.
Right.
You know, the more girls do it and the more they succeed in it, I think more people will get on board. And at the end of the day, like, I know my heart. I know the hearts of these girls that put their everything into this sport.
Yeah.
And it's all about representation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not with representation, what are you doing?
Yep.
Like, why would you want everyone to be the same or look the same?
Yeah.
Like, that's what makes the Olympics what it is.
Yeah.
And I think something that I would say to the girls is, I personally struggle with this so much, even right now, is you have this kind of blueprint or a plan of how things are supposed to go.
Right.
Like, you start gymnastics as soon as you can walk, and then you work your way up the levels, you go to elite, and you make the national team, and you do X, Y, Z, like, in these steps, at this time, at this age, and it's like, no, like, throw the whole script away. Like, write your own script in your head. Like, the way you got there, it was meant to happen that way. You don't have to live your life by checking all these steps and all these boxes. Like, get rid of the boxes and just be you. Like, that's the biggest thing I've had to tell myself, because my journey up until this point, like, it's moved at lightning speed, 1,000,000 miles a minute. And I still second guess myself, like, should I even be going to the Olympics? Like, I haven't been working as, like, this person and who's really poured their heart and soul into it. But at the end of the day, I have poured my heart and soul into it, like, just in different ways.
Yeah.
And just because our stories look different doesn't, you know, take away the spot of making an Olympic Games or making a national team.
Yeah.
Just because it looks different.
Yeah.
So I would just tell people, throw away the script, quit trying to, you know, fit in this box that you think you're supposed to fit in. Like, throw away the whole thing. Write your own story, pave your own path, take pride in it,
Yeah.
and know that if you're putting in the work, like, you deserve to be there.
Yeah. And who is Luisa Blanco? Who would you say you are as a human being?
I think I'm a lot of things. I'm a daughter. I'm a teammate. I'm a best friend that you can call at 3 a.m. when the world is asleep. I'm a competitor. And I'm ...
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
I don't know who I fully am yet without the sport,
Yeah.
but I know that the sport has given me everything that I need to go into life and figure out who I am, or
Yeah.
figure out who I can be and what kind of impact I can make on somebody else's life.
Yeah.
And I'm so blessed that I got to leave just the smallest footprint on this entire sport of gymnastics. And it's crazy to think that it's over, but I really can leave knowing I've given every ounce of my being into it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your vulnerability, your honesty, as we kind of discussed your next journey going into the Olympics. And I'll be cheering you on. I know
Thank you.
Tuscaloosa and Alabama will be cheering you on, and I know there's many across the country who will be cheering you on, plus the whole country. Look forward to your performance and going out there and really conquering the goals that you have set, or even just enjoying the time being there. And good luck on your trainings as you lead up to it and your travels. And I hope everything's great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Heated Conversation. This probably has been one of my favorite podcasts so far, just because what I really want this to be is a place where coaches and athletes are able to tell their story, and for us to really know, because that's what really inspires us, is being able to relate to people with things that really go on in our everyday life. But also to know that the ones who may be pursuing something that we think are almost supernatural or like heroic, knowing that they're a human behind that and they did a lot of work, and that they go through things, and you are able to see the finished product of what they had to go, and the blood and sweat and tears and the support that they had behind them. And if you want more of these stories, tune in to our podcast, Heated Conversations, and feel free to also tag people on social media of whose stories you want to hear, so they can be on the podcast. And again, thank you. Remember to like, to share, to subscribe, leave a comment. We'll see you guys on the next episode.